What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Scent Bubble. Hey, listen, I had a pretty cool subscriber question. I'm gonna try to get a lot more interactive with these in the future, especially rolling out 2026 and the content schedule for that. But a lot of times I post shorts on YouTube, like 2 to 4 shorts a day, and we're oftentimes answering a lot of the Q&A that happens. And I believe I was going on a rant about this fragrance right here, Azzaro Pour Homme, a classic, aromatic, kind of modern Fougere in the sense that it manipulates some of the Fougere structure, but old school barbershop fragrance, as most of you guys hear it referred to as. And I had a subscriber basically ask, is this for me? And it's really important that when you guys see my shorts, that you see the video it's connected to, because sometimes I'm trying to get at some overarching point about a fragrance, but there's other times where I'm just clipping a certain excerpt of the Q&A to get people interested who might not be familiar with the Q&A, and you may take something I say out of context. This was not the case here, but basically he thought I was bigging up this fragrance, which I was, because I said it's a kind of timeless masterpiece, but his real question was, is this fragrance good for me? And he said something really significant that made me realize I need to do a video about this. He said something along the lines of, I struggle with Fougères. And so immediately in my mind, as soon as I heard that, I said, I need to let this subscriber know that this is not the fragrance for him if he's struggled and had some letdown Fougères in the past and is trying to get into Fougere now. Azzaro Chrome is not a good introductory level Fougere fragrance, simply because it is so overly aromatic and brash that with all the different Fougere varieties out there, if you don't connect with it, you may think all Fougères smell like this, and they don't. In fact, Azzaro Chrome is somewhat of a remixed structure to what authentic Fougere DNAs actually smelled like. So if you smell that thinking all fragrances are in the same line as that, you're rudely mistaken. And I just think in the Fougere category, it's not challenging at all to wear if you are good with herbals and aromatics and kind of peppery and different types of aromatics and herbals in the air. But if that's not a familiar territory in terms of you wearing, I'm going to point you to some different directions because it could put a bad taste in your mouth. And I've seen it time and time again with Fougere. People may try something like this, Bentley for Men Intense, and go, oh my gosh, this is what Fougere is like. This is like being in a barbershop with amber shampoo or amber beard oil in, and it's boozy, and if this is what all Fougere smells like, I'm not interested in it. Maybe they smell something like Guy Laroche's Dracar, and they just think it smells super old, and they're like, if all Fougere smells like this, I don't want it. Or maybe you might get into some of the more modern Fougere offerings, like from the House of Amouage, where maybe it's a little too fancy and you actually want some more of that nostalgic, simple, compositional feel, and you don't want somebody taking what Fougere was and remixing it into this highly modern, highly creative, futuristic take on it. And so what I want to do today briefly is kind of tell you guys what Fougere is, and I've done a podcast to this, so I'll link the history of the Fougere podcast in the tab at the end of the video here. And I've also gone into it in shorter videos, but I do want to unpack the Fougere category even more in 2026 because there's so much to it, really. And we call a lot of stuff Fougere that technically on paper is not Fougere, and you need to know why, because ultimately I think Fougere is an incredible category of fragrance, and it can be so hard to sort through if you don't know much about it. Like, you're like 1 or 2 bad decisions away from never going into that category ever again, which would be a shame because the Fougere fragrance category is the cornerstone of all masculinity in perfumery in terms of what fragrances were built upon to serve the purposes of men who are wearing fragrance. And a lot of that has to do with culture and, you know, working class and different objectives that men had culturally in their lifestyle in terms of how the Fougere came about. Anyways, that was a really long intro. I just wanted to kind of vomit where my head's at for why I'm putting this video together. Again, let's zoom back out. Subscriber basically said, hey, I struggle with Fougeres. Where should I start? I've had a lot of bad success with Fougeres. What would you point me to? And so I'm going to walk you through a very small spectrum of Fougere fragrances. All of these fragrances aren't fragrances that I'm showing you because I highly recommend them. Now, I love all of them, but what I want to walk through is giving you some categories for how to think through Fougeres, and maybe through my breakdowns of these fragrances, it'll point you to what types of fragrances you should be looking for. And Lord willing, some of these fragrances might be the next fragrance that you need to try if you like what you hear from me. But I wanted to give you guys a diverse spread of Fougeres that I think are contenders in the marketplace today, ranging from beginning of time to modern time, and help you guys to think through your Fougere buying experience a little bit better. Now, for those of you that don't know, the first Fougere fragrance ever made in history, and we don't know the accuracy of this statement, but that's what history is showing us on Google and from people who talk about perfumery. Fougere Royale from Houbigant is the first Fougere fragrance because the perfumer of this fragrance was trying to create the scent of a fern. And a fern is scentless. It's a green plant that has no scent profile. A perfumer wanted to create a phantom accord of what would I want a fern to smell like? And he created that with this. This is a very green fragrance and aromatic with a base core composition of, I believe, lavender, cumarin, and oak moss. Let me double check that just for you guys real quick here. I don't recall if Fougere Royale had cumarin in it. It might actually be, I know it's lavender oak with oak moss in the base, but I want to see if the new formulation actually stays true to the Fougere composition and has cumarin in it. Wouldn't be surprised if it did. Okay, so it doesn't have cumarin in it, but it has cinnamon. And so excuse me. And so you're going to see with these various compositions, sometimes a note gets pulled out in the fragrance. But to my knowledge, the composition basically is somewhat of a top lavender, heart, cumarin, base, oak moss. And then there's varying accented herbals, aromatics, sweetness, and florals that have somewhat remixed what that means. Now, what does Houbigant Fougere Royale smell like? It smells like the fanciest, most timeless green plant. Smells to me like money, but in terms of a literal sense, it is the fanciest outdoor green scent you've ever had. It's aromatic, it's light, fresh, and earthy, yet still super pungent. By aromatic, we mean it's out in the air, it's recognizable. There's different herbals and spices and things and florals used to kind of elevate the senses when you smell this. And it's just an incredible composition. Again, this was classified as the first Fougere scent. From this fragrance, we get the term Fougere, which just means the fern. And I talk about this more in detail on other pieces of content I've done. Where are we at right now? We're at about 10 minutes, and I want to make this a 20-minute video. So now that we've got some information under our, under our skin as far as the topic, let's walk through some fragrances. Again, there's a lot of remixing to what Fougere is. So I wanted to just go through just some characteristics of Fougeres, so as we walk through these, you can understand it. A Fougere is a classic fresh green fragrance family in perfumery, named from the French word fern, evoking forests and barbershops built around the accords of lavender, oak moss, and cumarin, also known as the tonka bean. I don't know the difference between cumarin and the tonka bean. It's like the cumarin is some part of the extraction of the tonka bean. The tonka bean is just the tonka bean. I don't know. We'll do a deep dive video on why there's a word difference between cumarin and tonka. I just don't have it in my recent memory. But this creates a woody, herbaceous, fresh scent profile associated with masculine cologne. But this was originally for women, apparently. We'll dive into that later. So the characteristics of Fougere is fresh, green, woody, herbaceous, slightly sweet, often with a clean barbershop feel. Core notes, as obviously as we spoke, the lavender, which gives it sweetness and floral, oak moss, which gives it a woody earthiness, and cumarin, which gives it a hay-like sweetness from the tonka bean. Supporting notes can include, but are not limited to, bergamot citrus, geranium, vetiver, spices, herbs, and woods. The origin is this bad boy right here, Fougere Royale by Houbigant. Now this is a 2010 reformulation, but the perfumer that made this fragrance, who took over and wanted to make a modern version of Fougere Royale, really tried to stay true to the original profile and just give it some modern lift so it could be appreciated in all of its glory. So I'm confident that this is pretty darn close to the original. And then in terms of the evolution of Fougeres, we have classic Fougere, aromatic. So I'll define these for you guys. Classic Fougere, the original accord structure, focusing on the core notes. We have aromatic Fougere, which adds more herbs, spices, and woods for complexity. And then we have modern Fougeres that incorporate diverse notes like citruses, florals, and ambers for versatility. In simple terms, think of the crisp smell of the forest after it rains, blended with clean soap and fresh cut hay. That's the essence of a Fougere, a timeless scent that's both natural and sophisticated. Okay, I'm gonna close the laptop because now we gotta get into the nitty gritty. Why did I spend 10, 12 minutes going over all of this stuff with you? Well, because in your mind, you may think, I'm just looking for the next best fragrance, but there are some things you can't go through the front door with, or the side door with. The side door would be, hey, go buy Fougere Royale by Houbigant, call it a day. But everybody is different in perfumery and we all gravitate towards different things. And since the Fougere category is quite diverse today, just naming a couple of Fougere scents could make or break somebody's whole perception of Fougere, because there's so many different types of Fougere and they all smell totally different in some cases. And so what my goal is today is I'm going to give you a lot of fragrances to consider, but I need to give you a language to understand Fougere. Almost like you're not tuned into the frequency of what Fougere is. I'm going to give you the glasses and the radio station to tune in and kind of understand what's going on, so that you can look at what I'm saying and say, you know what, SB, the way he talked about Cacharell pour le Homme, I really think as a Fougere, I would start there and work my way around some of the other stuff. And that's exactly why I'm making this video. My YouTube channel exists to help curate your journey. What does that mean? To inform you with understandable things. Take all the difficult parts of perfumery, bottle it up into something very simple. It takes a little work, obviously, because when you're learning something new, just like anything, it's difficult at first. But after watching me for a while, you really start to understand the world of perfumery and your own conscience in terms of like what you really like or what you might really like. And so that's why we're going to go through this here. Okay, long-winded SB as usual. Let's get to the good stuff. So now that we have the first original Fougere fragrance out of the way, let's talk about some fragrances. And I've tried to organize these in terms of kind of like a progression from sticking to the core of Fougere and then moving up in terms of modernness. Modernness does not mean more wearable. It just means that the composition changes into other things that you may like. So after this is not a history lesson. It's not in sequential order completely, but I think about a fragrance like Havana. Havana to me is a kind of classic Fougere with a bunch of beautiful bells and whistles on it. It's got that classic green, clean, soapy character to it, mostly green than soapy, but it's got all of these aromatic facets to it. There's a little bit of sweetness. There's just, like, imagine going outside in one of the most pristine forests ever and just bumping into random things while you're walking through the forest. These things that have this elegant aromatic experience. Maybe you bump into a pine cone. Maybe you bump into a pine tree. Maybe you, pick up a rock. I mean, you're just bumping into all this beautiful stuff woven into this tapestry of green, clean, soapy beauty. And that's what I think of with this fragrance. It's quite linear, but with a lot of complexity in its accents. So I honestly think Havana will be reminiscent of Fougere's Fougere Royale from Houbigant. It's definitely, 20-ish, 30-ish% different, but it has the same essence of that green, money Fougere quality. And so that is Aramis's Havana. And Aramis is a great house to look into for Fougeres if you're interested in Fougeres that feel somewhat old school in terms of they have a history to them, a backbone. They're made differently than fragrances of today. So when you smell them, they take you to a time and a place, and the essence of them is what remains ageless. This is a very gentlemanly fragrance that I think doesn't make you feel like an old man. It just feels important. Such a good scent. Okay, moving along. Then you move into another fragrance from the house of Aramis, and I think Aramis makes Fougere fragrances incredible and affordable. They just all punch way above their weight class in terms of quality. The refinement on these is like spectacular. You'll think you're smelling niche fragrances. There was once upon a time you could get the Aramis fragrances for like $30. I think nowadays they push anywhere between $50 to $200 depending on which Aramis you have. This is Aramis New West, and there's some interesting notes in New West. I think there's even a watermelon note in it, which is kind of crazy for how long ago this fragrance came out. It has the green forest quality, but there's so much airy crispness to it. Now it's about the wind that passes through the forest. So it's more light instead of like pungent green richness. And again, in the modern world, think of fragrances like Dior's Eau Sauvage, not Dior Sauvage, Eau Sauvage. That green blast is kind of, if you've never smelled a Fougere fragrance, what we're talking about. There's this green foresty blast that could possibly have, soapy-like quality, aromatic-like quality, sweetness, woodiness, all the beauty of the outdoors trapped behind this green blast. And so that's what we're dealing with here. You still get the green blast, but it's about this airy crispness that has all these aromatics lifting and tickling the fragrance and almost giving it like an outdoor green champagne-ness to it. And this is a really great fragrance. This is New West by Aramis. Absolutely timeless. Again, all three of these fragrances, the Fougere Royale, New West, and Havana, have a somewhat top hat gentleman feel. But I've found that once you wear them a couple of times, they really do feel timeless. Like if you're a man. Now for younger boys under 25, I don't think any of these three are your tea, because maybe New West more than either of these because it's more airy and lighter and fresh. I don't think typically guys 25 and under, unless you're different, you're unique, you've got an old soul, can handle the intensity and the unapologetic nature of a Fougere, because a Fougere just punches with masculinity. We're not talking about sweetness here. If you ever get sweetness from a Fougere, it might go 2 or 3 out of 10 in terms of sweetness. This is everything else other than sweet. I will show you some sweeter fragrances, but that is normally the biggest turnoff for most young men dealing with trying to get into a Fougere, is they're looking for something sweet, familiar. And considering that most designer fragrances today are built around sweetness and vanilla and sweet spicy and sweet fresh and powdery and all that stuff, going into Fougere from that launch pad is going to be kind of overwhelming. Where are we at right now? 20 minutes. Wow. Okay, let's speed through this. This is a fragrance that to me is classic French perfumery. It smells like it was made somewhere else other than the United States, you know. So for all intents and purposes, it's very French. And I think this is a French creation. Cacharell, you know what I'm saying? But what do I want to say about this? What I want to say is this fragrance still captures that green blast, right? But the nuance here is this is a smoother, jet-like green blast. And what makes it so smooth, there's two standout elements to this fragrance that make it different than these green blast kind of fragrances. Number one, nutmeg. It has a ton of nutmeg, this kind of spiced sweetness that acts like a vanilla coating over the green. And so you get this very still pungent green note, but then it's got this odd level of like woody sweetness in it. That's so awesome. I mean, there's so many days I wear this fragrance and it's French, it's top hatty, and yet the formulation and blend is so perfect that it's timeless. I wear this fragrance, and again, let me just say this, for the three fragrances I just mentioned plus Cacharell Pour L'Homme, and I should say Pour L'Homme, I believe, but all these fragrances feel like go-getter fragrances, meaning you go out and you make money. You go out and you provide for your family. You go out and you do business deals. You go out and you put out fires. Man's man fragrances. Go-getter, businessman, working man, protector, provider, all things that encompass the masculine DNA and aura is what these are like. But in terms of just scentness, they feel like outdoor, foresty, also the smell of money in a very exotic way. But again, fragrance like this has this nutmeg sweetness overtone to it and this Frenchness that gives it quite a nuance and very distinct. You can still get this fragrance today for $20-$30. And man, I think, again, some themes I want to say as they come to me, because I know this is probably going to be a 30-minute video, is young guys under 25. There's plenty of young guys that I know that do have their Fougères that they like, but it is kind of something younger men tiptoe through if they like it. It's like most young men can't understand Fougère, and the ones that do realize they're treading a thin line because they are aware of the fact that they're still young. So there's certain things that they gravitate to, and most of the stuff they still don't gravitate towards yet, but they're trying to build an appetite for maturity in perfumery, and that's what matters. And so for guys like that, a video like this would be super important. And I promise you, I would never put a fragrance on a video unless we're doing reviews that I think is small change. All of these I wear very consistently when I'm in the mood for Fougère. But yeah, let's move on. So the fragrance that started this video, Azzaro Chrome, what you need to know about this is that Azzaro Chrome has a very conventional, old school feel, but it's so different from all of these fragrances on this table because it takes aromatics to completely new heights. It's super spicy, super peppery, yet it has almost this, I don't want to say mentholic mintiness to it because it's not minty at all, but it's so crisp and sharp. And by sharp, we don't mean the way we think about sharp today, which is like synthetic or chemically. This is just aromatics that are sharp. You know, imagine if you went into, you know, you were in a kitchen and you were just cracking pepper. Pepper it's smooth, but it's sharp in terms of it's brash, it's in your face, it's unapologetic, and it will make your nose hairs stand up. And that's what Azzaro Chrome really is. When it sits down, it's more palatable, but that first spray in the air, you just get all of these aromatic herbals and spices and pepperiness, to me at least, that make it one of the more abrasive fougères out of this lineup here. And so I don't recommend this for beginners because it's very serious. It's very like 30 plus, and it's very like conventional, like 80s, 90s, early 2000s, like, you know, bank teller, you know, mechanic, farmer, in terms of like just fragrances that can cut through a lot of funk. You know, if you're out and you're working and you're sweating, you're perspirating, a fragrance like this will really punch through all of that funk, and it's a sharp, aromatic masterclass of a fragrance. This is more serious than a lot of these fragrances, and it's the less green fragrance. It's more about aromatics with a backbone of kind of some of the Fougere components. Again, that's Azzaro Chrome. You can get it today at Ross for between 10 and 20 bucks. Now, let's move on to what I would call like a sporty Fougere, and this is Quorum Silver by Antonio Puig. This is, I call this sporty because it's more of the lighter variety of Fougere in my opinion. And a lot of you guys, if there's any fragrances up here where when you go on Fragrantica, it says it doesn't say Fougere, fight me in the comments. These are barbershoppy, clean, soapy, gentleman-like fragrances to me, and most of them I believe are categorized as Fougere, but some of them, as you'll see, I'm throwing in for the simple fact of giving variety that still can give a Fougere feel, whether they're called Fougeres or not. So again, this is more sporty, more citric, more fresh, spicy, but it has this kind of Bleu de Chanel Eau de Toilette light airiness to it. Doesn't smell anything like Bleu de Chanel, but it has that kind of weight to it. It's crisp air, but it's the tone and scent profile is very like fresh green and aromatic and almost even watery to an extent. More like windy, aromatic, fresh green. And so this is more of your kind of Bleu de Chanel Eau de Toilette weight applied to the Fougere category. So maybe younger people can get into that because with the brash, unapologetic nature of Fougeres, a younger guy would probably prefer it to be more light and crisp and airy so that it feels smoother and is less unapologetic, so that they have some kind of connection point. Let's talk about this. I don't think this is categorized as a Fougere fragrance. Maybe they might call this like a spicy floral. This is the first fragrance Mont Blanc ever made, Mont Blanc Presence. You can get it today in Ross for like $10, $25, depending on what size you get. And even though this completely abandons these fragrances that I just mentioned in terms of Fougere structure and all that stuff, this scent smells like you just got out of an all-white Bugatti or a gray Jaguar. It still has that fresh manness, go-getterness about it. And so the thing that connects it to a lot of these fragrances is the aromatics, the florals, the woods, the spice. That's what connects it, is in its vibe and tone. I think there's even lavender. You get a blast of heliotrope in this fragrance, but there's no oak moss. There's no coumarin. It's so beautiful though. It's got this like minty, airy cooliness. This minty, airy cooliness on a bed of like white, distinct purple and white florals. And then it has these aromatics and amber just injected into it this is a modern Fougere in my eyes, because even though the scent came out in the very early 2000s, man, it's timeless, it feels modern, and this will surprise you. If you're used to all of the other Mont Blancs, this smells totally different. It's amazing how their first fragrance knocks out most of their new releases to me in terms of timelessness. But this is a more modern take on Fougere as far as structure, and it still somehow smells like money, go-getter masculinity. Last two, and we're gonna call it a day. What are we at? 30 minutes. So let's wrap up here. We're gonna have to continue this conversation later, but I think I've gotten you guys, pushed in the door. Here's a completely different take on a Fougere style. This is a barbershop scent that banks on amber and rum. So I don't remember the structure of this fragrance, but essentially it's kind of got that frothy, somewhat Palo Santo-y ambery beard oil, that frothy sweetness and that shaving cream feel. But then it's just doused in booze. Now, that's more the case for Bentley for Men Intense, which I actually think is too intense for my liking. So I knocked it down to the OG. The OG is more light, airy, and crispy. And again, this is like rum, boozy rumminess and amber. It's the most sweet out of this entire lineup. And I think a lot of you guys who might have thought Bentley for Men Intense was overwhelming because so many old men on TikTok or on YouTube have hyped Bentley for Men Intense. Talk about an unapologetic fragrance, but man, this fragrance right here gets no attention at all, and you can get this for like 10 to 20 bucks, and I love this. I actually hate and don't prefer Bentley for Men Intense because it's just not my tea. This is scaled down like 1/4 of the intensity, so it makes it more airy and crisp, but you still get that frothy shaving gel, ambery, Palo Santo-y, but super boozy crispness. And I think in that way, it's a more modern take on a Fougere, very wearable today. And then lastly, perhaps one of the most wearable Fougeres, in my opinion, that captures the essence of the Fougere, but is not just timeless, but you could still wear it today. And all of these you could still wear today. But I think if there was one fragrance out of this assortment that I could unapologetically say would be an amazing starter fragrance to thinking through Fougere that won't take you too far in the past, and it's structured in a way where today it can kind of ninja its way into the fragrance world and almost feel like it came out yesterday. Ralph Lauren's Safari. This is an incredible fragrance. It captures everything of what masculinity is. It's got the greenness. It's got the aromaticness to it. This is somewhere between Drakkar Noir and Fougere Royale and even Bleu de Chanel. It takes those essences, like if you took a little bit of the kind of fresh out of the shower, freshly shaven aftershave splashness of Drakkar Noir, and then you took the beauty and the elegance and the green blast from like Fougere Royale or Aramis Havana. As far as the green structure, it's got this lush green fernness to it. And then you give it this almost Bleu de Chanel twist. And I don't know what the structure is. It feels like some sort of aromatics or like sage, like a sage lavender combo in the heart or something like that. Because you get kind of like this sporty, watery Bleu de Chanel eau de toilette thing going with it. But then it keeps pushing you back into the green, and then it pushes you into the aftershave. Like, this is the perfect aftershave. I would get it as a splash and hit my beard after I shaved, which I still need to do. And I would spray it all over myself. Again, I just think this is the Bleu de Chanel popular mass appeal fragrance for the Fougere category. Like, this is the front runner for Fougere in my eyes, in terms of like, if no people who liked Fougere were being introduced to Fougere, I would start them all on this. And just because I'm saying start them on this, don't think for a second this isn't a masterpiece. Absolute masterpiece. This can go toe to toe with any Fougeres you have today. The only thing it really doesn't make sense for is going against like the more modern Amouage style Fougeres, or even like the Rojas, you know, with the Scandal and the Danger and the Vetiver and stuff like that, because those are more of like kind of like futuristic, modern, sparkly, light versions of like their previous versions, which were heavier. This, again, I think it punches like a Bleu de Chanel EDP, but it's green and Fougere and aftershavey and all of the Fougere-ness. But it feels as mass appeal-y as Bleu de Chanel. definitely put this in your collection. So to answer my subscribers, my fellow friends' question of what he should start with because he's had a bad experience with Fougeres, my number one choice is going to be Ralph Lauren's Safari. And you can get this for about 40, 50 bucks. 100 mil, it is worth every penny. If you want the fragrance, I think you can always wear fresh out of the shower, dumb reach, go about your day. Again, you cannot be a kid with this fragrance. If you have a 9-to-5 job and you want people to take you seriously, you want women to think you're a gentleman, not even just a gentleman. If you want women to think you're a man, this gives you all of that. It's a go-getter fragrance. It has all the essence of the Fougere, but the timeless modernness that can go toe-to-toe with just about any Fougere in the game today. I would recommend this fragrance as the starter fragrance for any age of man stepping into Fougere territory. If you like Fougeres as a man and you've hated the distinctness and circumstantiality of, I hope that's a word, we're gonna roll with it because I have this nice professional setup here. But if you're a guy who has Fougere fragrances and you're starting to collect them and you're like, yeah, I like Fougeres, and you've never heard of this and you've never put your nose to this, you should be ashamed of yourself. But get your nose on this. This is a centerpiece. If you look at any of our modern guys, Sebastian, Max, any of our men in the space who have surveyed Fougere fragrances, they will tell you that this will never leave their collection because it just has done, it's just been a staple, and it still rocks today. I wore this a couple times last week, wore it this week. I almost wore this for Christmas Eve. It's crazy, and I have so many great options. Anyways, guys, I'm going to put these fragrances out for you and say the names of them, and then we're going to wrap up because I am a day late and $1 short, and I need to get my butt out of here. And I know this is probably a podcast now, but okay. So Cacharell Pour Le Homme, probably get that for like 30 today. Bentley for Men, OG, not intense. Bentley for Men original. You can get that for like 10 to 20 bucks. Burlington, anything like that online. Aramis Havana. Again, it used to be 30 bucks. You'll probably pay anywhere between 30 to 100 bucks depending where you find it. Ralph Lauren Safari, you can get that for about 40, 50 bucks. Houbigant's Fougere Royale, most of you guys won't ever buy this fragrance because it retails for like $220 to $300. You kind of have to get it directly from their website. If you go third party for this, make sure the guy's reputable. And even if you get it third party, you probably won't get it for below 180. And even if you got it for that, go get a birthday cake and blow some candles out because you got it for a really great price. Incredible juice. It's amazing how they still charge that much for this fragrance today, and I would pay the full price because the first Fougere fragrance, and yet it feels so niche and encapsulates Fougere essence to a T. I mean, it's the original Fougere, but I'm just saying, like, I could literally put this against any Fougere and it would struggle to beat this. In terms of the identity of what a Fougere means, it's crazy how modern this is today, and how full-bodied it is, and like you spray it and it's there, and it just checks every box from presentation to scent. This is Azzaro Chrome. Again, your super aromatics, peppery, spicy, sharp joint. 20 bucks in Ross. Quorum Silver you can get today for probably under 30 bucks. Your more lighter, crisp, sporty take, more of a citrus rendering of the Fougere house. Probably a more modern, people don't say it's Fougere, but I'm saying it's Fougere. Mont Blanc Presence you can get in a Ross or just about anywhere for 15 to 20 bucks. Highly recommend it. Aramis New West, timeless, 30 bucks to 100. Just depends on where you find it because people are price gouging the heck out of it. Most wearable, most modern, most vintage timelessness in these three, and most sporty right here, these two. and most brash, yet most signaturely distinct. And these are the sweetest. I hope that helped. Like, comment, subscribe. More importantly, turn on that notification bell. Talk to me. I do talk back. I got to go, especially since we're hitting, wow, the 40-minute mark. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. But at the end of the day, in terms of what we've evaluated today, if you're just getting in, start with Ralph Lauren Safari, and the world is your oyster after that. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below. I got a jet, but I'm going to put 2 videos up on the board for you based off what you've been searching for. If you're interested in Fougere at all and want to add to the conversation, please utilize that comment section below and check the playlist section, because if you ever want to see if I have other videos on these topics, I sort my channel out. I go through a lot of hard work to make cool graphics and to channel organize this place in a way where there's a ton of content, but it's organized to where if you want to binge on a particular type of content, short or long, you can check the playlist section. It's very beautifully organized. With that being said, my name is SB. You're rocking with me in the scent bubble, and I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your week. This was an evaluation of Fougere fragrances based off of a question I got on one of my shorts from my subscribers. Thank you so much for that question, and I hope it brought value to the rest of the community. Peace.